Throughout all of the perspectives, the one we have not seen, the one around whom the story has turned, has been closed off to us until the last quarter of the book, Marco Inaros. And this is significant. I have repeatedly offered the viewpoint that Marco's strategy is non-viable. One cannot simultaneously reject all claims on territory when one's goal is the acquisition of territory. Like the conspiracy of murderers on Illis, who were still thinking like terrorists, that provoking violence against Belters would win them the PR battle by losing their friends and loved ones. Likewise, Marco cannot stop thinking like a rebel, that fighting just operated at a level of scale. Old Belter strategies with weak ships are 10 times more effective at winning the war because the ships are 10 times more powerful, instead of needing new strategy for the new kind of war. Because it's not as if the solar system is some stereotypical banana republic where a key victory by the revolution places them in power. Marco cannot swoop in while the capital is under-defended and seize control for himself by lining up all the old regime forces against a blood-splattered wall. Marco's strategy is earning victories, yes. But as the saying goes, amateurs talk strategy, professionals talk logistics. Marco can't run his fleet without a logistical support base, and he ignores the advice of others on that. Sandrani sends him a 30-minute message explaining that what Marco is doing is pointless. An independent belt can't happen if Marco destroys the belt's financial backing that makes Free Navy scrip worth anything at all, which would mean the inners would control their economy and thus cut off any true independence for them. But Marco will not listen, dismissing this all as histrionics. As I said at the beginning, Marco presumes that since in his little cell he was the smartest person in the room, he now assumes he's the smartest person in every room. We discover Marco's limitations by going inside of his head. We know that he's charismatic, and we know that he is good at strategy, but that seems to be the limitations of what he knows. Because going inside his head, what we see is that Marco isn't trying to convince people of a convenient lie in order to get what he wants. He's trying to convince them of a lie because he wholeheartedly believes it's the truth. He is certain that his strategy is genius and will not allow any other perspective to intrude. Oh yes, he's continuing to make life difficult, and he can make it so the Free Navy is never defeated. But he believes that not losing is the same as winning. He believes that they can continue to lose assets to the combined fleet and Michio Pa, and that the OPA can openly work against him. And somehow he'll still prevail. To hear Marco talk, his enemies are losing when they stay in place, and they're also losing when his enemies are moving. When they're doing the former, he has terrified them into inaction, and when they're doing the latter, he's provoked them into a mistake. Self-confidence is very helpful, but Marco Inaros shows that there is a huge difference between self-confidence and just being an egomaniac. This egotism has cost him something he probably thought he could never lose, the respect of his son. Philip sees Marco for what he is now. So when his father assembles everyone to declare that this is the moment they have been waiting for, Philip doesn't stand there in rapt attention waiting to discover this latest clever plan. Instead, he demands to know if this is really the one this time and not like any of the others before this. How long, as he puts it, are they going to keep falling down and claiming they meant to? Marco cannot countenance this attitude and so dismisses Philip as a child. As he notes, humiliation is even more powerful than a beating. It shows you don't even respect someone enough to take them seriously. After hearing from someone on Tython who lost her mother because of the attack that Philip had led in order to help get the Martian ships, he decides not to rejoin Marco when the flagship departs, getting a job and applying under Naomi's last name. As for Naomi herself, she's on the Rocinante heading for the gates, leading a surprise attack to take Medina. No matter how much Marco talked about not being pinned to territory, Medina was too strategically vital to be lost. Thanks to a distraction with an ice hauler, Bobby and an assault team land on the alien station to take control of the railguns. Only the arrival of Duarte's people was in response to Pa's revolt, knowing that she would potentially compromise security, and so they have reinforced the railguns with their own personnel. Bobby succeeds in stopping the railgun threat, but only by damaging it beyond their ability to repair, and Marco is furiously speeding towards the gate with 14 other ships. No one can do anything to help in time, and Marco revels in the thought of killing Holden, purely for the good of the belt, of course, and of deciding whether or not to take Naomi back and tame her, as he always knew she needed to be. His mind is filled with visions of using Medina to its fullest potential, dominating all other human-settled systems across the many colonies, even possibly turning against Duarte, whose faction sits behind a gate with a warning message for no one to attempt to enter. On Medina, while passing along the data the station had on the missing ships, Naomi discovered the pattern. A high-traffic, high-energy transit essentially created a window during which ships would be lost. In a Save Our Skins plan, they used their ice hauler to create such conditions on purpose, and Marco's fleet flies straight into the energized ring and is lost forever, ending the military threat of the Free Navy. But while the threat of the Free Navy to both the Inners and the Belters they wanted to protect may be gone, Holden continues to recognize the bigger picture here, an essential one. What causes people to support a Marco Inaros is not because they love violence or hatred, believe in inflicting murder and suffering as retribution. It comes from desperation. Civilization, Amos had said in Nemesis games, keeps people civil. The reason it keeps people civil is that what you have to gain by uncivil behavior is outweighed by what you gain from being civil. I could gather a few friends, arm them, and take over one of the mansions nearby if I wanted to, and I could talk about living in the lap of luxury there to motivate them to see how we would all benefit. But I wouldn't do that, because I know the likelihood of being eventually killed or incarcerated for that isn't worth it compared to my current lifestyle. My life's not perfect, but it's certainly better than the consequences of that. But if my current life isn't worth more than those options, if something were to happen to leave me destitute and without hope, then the unthinkable is worth considering. You can't motivate people by a fear of losing what they have if they've got nothing left to lose. Marco Inaros was a symptom of the problem the Gates presented, which was a future without Belters, a historically marginalized group about to be left behind because mining the outer planets was no longer necessary, and all the infrastructure that supported them would go away as well, the way that a factory shutting down leads to the fall of local businesses because the workforce is no longer capable of patronizing them. This led to outrage in the Belt, as we heard through Robert's chapter before the surrender of Medina to Holden. There's a woman at the bar, in fact, ranting about how they'll let the colonists suffer as retribution for generations of their own suffering, and everyone acting as if that was reasonable. Despite the fact, and remember this, the very first colonists were Belters. It wasn't just people from the bloated Earth or fleeing the Mars terraforming effort. It was Belters, too, who were seeking new opportunities on the colonies. They were being starved out by their fellow Belters and having it called justice. No mention of them is made, but it'll likely be seen as them betraying their people by settling down a gravity well where other Belters can't follow. It's not about the Belt. It's about people inflicting suffering because their own suffering has been ignored. It doesn't make it right, but it helps us to understand what's going on so that perhaps we can address the underlying problem, hence where Holden comes in. Holden's view of this has been from the beginning to find reconciliation, because the colonies are not going away and the Belters aren't going away. Instead, what he proposed is a spacing guild, that Belters could form a union for the express purpose of facilitating transportation between the many colonies and also of handling traffic control through the gate to prevent further loss of ships. This is a need, and Belters have the life experience to handle it. The leaders of Earth and Mars assembled to discuss some of the post-Free Navy topics, during which Holden's idea is shared with them at Avasarala's prompting. Michio Pa, who lost 2 of her spouses in an ambush by the Free Navy and was herself hospitalized for some time because of it, is present at this meeting, under a sort of unspoken amnesty for her part in stopping the Free Navy. Anderson Dawes, Rosenfeld, and Sandrani have all been arrested to answer for the attack on Earth. As Pa listens to Earth's leader list all the virtues needed in the one who needs to head up this new spacing guild, and seeing Holden's grin growing all the wider as she lists them, Pa is certain this is a coronation, forming a new belt under the leadership of James Holden. So she is probably more surprised than anyone when, at the announcement that it will be Holden, that Holden himself will jump up in confusion and outrage that they would put an Earther in charge rather than a Belter. Merit-wise, Holden is certainly up for the job. In fact, one could argue he's perfect for it. But in this case, when there's generations of mistrust between Earth and the Belt, it's going to be impossible for Holden to be anything other than an Earther to a Belt that's fearful that Earthers don't care if they live or die out. Fred Johnson was more committed to the Belt than most Belters, and even he was constantly met with mistrust and hatred. His death was celebrated by some of the very people he had spent so much of his life trying to help and protect. There is no room for forgiveness or possibility of redemption in some hearts. There are only past sins whose stains cannot be removed. Holden would be a very capable administrator with his heart in the right place that would only act in the best interests of the Belt. But that's not good enough. The reason Belters rallied to Marco, even though they didn't approve of murder, was because he was a symbol that the Belt would not be oppressed any longer. Marco is gone, and good bloody riddance. But we need a new symbol now. Pa, despite her history as the Pirate Queen, is the best that they've got right now. Someone who acted for the Belt against both interplanet oppression and Marco's tyranny. Pa can run it because she fed starving Belters when others wouldn't. Pa can run it because she rejected politics for a moral stand. Pa can run it because in a time when people hate and fear, she can stand for unity among Belters and go to the inners on an even footing. The book closes with an epilogue from Anna's point of view, a counterpart to the prologue from Nono's, which had shown how grim things were. The 3 are now heading to a colony world to begin again. But the opportunity for reflection on these recent events is offered because of a discussion of Nami's history assignment. They're examining whether events that happened would have happened anyway, that they were the result of pressures and developments that just made them inevitable, or if it's the so-called great man hypothesis, that things happened because the right person was in the right place to cause it to happen. The conclusion they seem to settle on is that it can't be one answer alone, but both. A social pressure often requires someone to be there to help it to cause change, and that no matter how great a person, they can't force or resist great change. And there's also a mention of the cycles of history. This discussion naturally suggests that Marco, Holden, Avasarala, and others were there to help direct and focus the historical forces of their times, that what they did mattered even if there was something behind them. But there are also those like Pa who seem to flip the table over with her decision, providing 3 undeniable benefits: undermining the Free Navy by both distracting Marco in his quest to make an example of her and also undermining his position with less radical Belters. 2, vouching for Holden to help bring many OPA factions onto his side against Medina. And 3rd, providing the essential information needed to properly raid the slow zone without being cut down by the surprise of the railgun. Likewise, Naomi identifying originally the actual ship losses not being theft, and in the end, how to use this fact to wipe out the Free Navy fleet, was a profound individual difference in the history of the species. While those at the heads of fleets and governments can sometimes be considered to be the avatar of an existing force, an individual making the right or wrong decision can also change history. The reason for this discussion is because so much of these two novels is about the inevitability of history and the cyclical nature of it. These are perhaps the ones most reflective about these points and philosophical about it. More than one reference is made to some of the things that we're seeing being as old as primates. One thing about the human race, we've got a lot of past in our past. The book closes out on this period in history. The final trilogy is set at a later period, what with there being unanswered questions, after all, like what are the Laconians doing back there? Who killed the proto-molecule creators? And why do ships vanish going through the ring sometimes? But Babylon's Ashes draws the Expanse as we've known it to a close by showing us a diminishing of power by Mars and a plan to grow the power of the belt in the new form that it will take. The old three-power system is collapsing for something new. Maybe better, maybe worse, though Anna at least counters the early assessment that the stars are better off without us, that perhaps what we are becoming means the stars will be better off with us. The title Babylon's Ashes is naturally a reference to the ancient city of fame and infamy, but what is most notable about Babylon is its majesty. Babylon's Ashes suggest to us the fall of the mighty. Earth isn't what it was, Mars isn't what it was, and in the end, even the power of the Free Navy has evaporated. But perhaps most relevant is what led to this, the opening of the ring gates, the outer worlds all linked up previously by the proto-molecule creators that said things would not and could not go on as they had been. So it's particularly notable that the name of Babylon in the original language translated as Gate of the Gods.